a place for information and talk. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
The time is 36 minutes past 10. You're still on Power's Perspective this evening for our final round together this evening in 2025. We'll be back on the airwaves in 2026 on the 5th of January, but on the 4th of January. But for now, we wrap up the year looking at various issues that can help us plan better for the year ahead. And so we are having a conversation this evening with Simtanda Miyemane, who is a practitioner support manager at the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund, to help us understand how we can plan better for protecting ourselves within the legal space when we engage a lawyer. How do we make sure that if that lawyer does something that is not in our interest, particularly steals from us, how do we get support during that? Simtandile, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to Power Perspective.
Good evening to you and good evening to the listeners.
And thanks for joining us here on this last evening of Power Perspective for 2025 on a topic that I think is going to be really helpful for people as we go into the new year, and particularly in a year where we've heard so much about the institutions that we've always relied on to be our support structures and to help us through a difficult time in the legal fraternity, now having much more scrutiny and a lack of trust building in that space. So I thought this conversation a really timely one, especially as we unpack what this actually means and what are our avenues, as it's put. Tell us a little bit more about the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund. How has it originated? What's the thought behind this kind of platform?
The Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund is an institution that exists in terms of the Legal Practice Act, and the mandate of the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund is to reimburse clients of legal practitioners who, in the process of receiving legal services, suffer pecuniary loss at the hands of the legal practitioners, which means they had either entrusted money or property with the legal practitioners, but that money or property goes missing or misappropriated at the hands of the legal practitioners. So when people encounter that, they can come and claim that property, the value of the property, or the money that was entrusted from us.
And so this is a sort of instance where a lot of people end up in these kinds of situations because they don't really know the law, and they don't actually know how the law is being practiced on their behalf. And so that gives lawyers a lot of power. How prevalent is this, what I would call an abuse of power in the space of attorneys and legal practitioners?
If we look at the number of legal practitioners that we have in the country, it's not as prevalent, but for those that actually are malicious, they take a lot of money from the client, and as a result, it gives a bad name to the profession. But like I indicated, if we look relatively in terms of numbers of practitioners, there isn't a lot of them that do that kind of practice, but they actually do ruin the legal profession. The few that are doing it are ruining the legal profession.
And so is it a widespread issue, and how do you track that? How do you know just how much of a problem this is? To set up an entire entity, I'm assuming that you've definitely figured out that this is a big enough problem for this entity to exist, but how is this tracked?
This is tracked in terms of the complaints that are received by the Legal Practice Council. It's tracked in terms of the claims that we receive when money is going missing. The Legal Practice Council will deal with ethical issues. So complaints that relate to ethicality and people not doing the work that they should be doing will be reported with them. So we use a lot of information that we also get even from newspapers, stuff that is out there that is complaints about legal practitioners, and where we read about them stealing some money from certain clients who are not suspecting. So we track it by using that, but mostly we also have a trust line where people do call in and report issues, and that's where we see that the issue has got to be addressed. Hence, we decided we need to have an initiative where we talk to the public because they are the clients of the legal practitioners. So if we can nip it at the client leg, it could actually reduce the prevalence of the issue from spreading widely.
A very, very important intervention that is required here because, as you say, this is not only about the clients that are losing out from this, but also about the reputation and the trust of the legal fraternity that is being ruined by bad actors within the space. What is the kind of service that the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund actually provides? So what's the process that would be followed if somebody wants to engage with the services of the fund?
If a person, like I've indicated, is a client of a legal practitioner and is receiving a legal service, and they pay a deposit into the trust account of a legal practitioner, but at some point it becomes obvious or it becomes a suspicion that the monies that they have paid in are no longer in the trust account, whilst the work is not concluded or not even done, or monies that should be paid out to the person are no longer in the trust account, the legal practitioner is unable to pay out. That person can come and claim from us by completing an affidavit which should be commissioned, and they need to provide us evidence of using the services of the legal practitioner in the form of an agreement or a mandate where they mandate the legal practitioner to assist them with the legal service. They can also attach the proof of payment where a deposit was made, or if, for instance, a deposit was made by another entity on their behalf, for instance, the Road Accident Fund, in cases where they were represented with the Road Accident Fund, they can provide proof that's coming from the Road Accident Fund that proves that monies were entrusted for that person. They can then approach us with all that information, lodge a claim with us. They can also go to the Legal Practice Council and lodge a complaint, because as the regulator, they also will look at the ethicality of that legal practitioner. But in any event, whether they come to us or they go to the legal practice, both institutions will know what is happening because we do engage each other so that we both know what is happening. So if there is theft of money, we encourage people to come forward and claim from us with all the evidence that we may need. However, if it happens that there is certain evidence that they have not provided that we require, we will write back to them to say we require this and that when we do the merits investigation of the claim that we have received.
Simtandani, thank you for raising the RAF issue, because I did want to use this as an example, just to be as practical as possible in terms of how people might approach. In the instances of RAF, what are the kinds of eventualities that people could approach you on? And also this question of providing evidence. How do people attain? What kind of evidence are you looking for people to be able to attain? Because many people may say, I don't even know, what you're looking for, what kind of evidence is available for this. But using RAF as an example, what are the specific kinds of issues that might come up in a RAF case, for example, that might be applicable to the fund, and what would the fund be able to do? Does the fund make me whole? Does the fund then reimburse me and make me whole for what the practitioner has stolen, or does the fund help me in terms of taking these matters and these processes forward?
In the case of a road accident fund matter, for instance, you may find that a person approaches a legal practitioner to represent them with the road accident fund in claiming from the road accident fund where they were involved in an accident. The road accident fund then makes an offer of settlement for that claim. Ideally, the legal practitioner should then contact the claimant that they are representing to say this is the offer, and are they happy with the offer to accept it, and they will accept the offer. Once it's accepted, the road accident fund then pays into the trust account of the legal practitioner that's representing the claimant, and then the legal practitioner is expected to pay the claimant. What we normally see is that if either the claimant did not receive any money from the legal practitioner after the road accident fund has paid into the trust account, or they did not pay everything that is due to the claimant, they overreach on their fees. So those are some of the things that we encounter. Now, the evidence that we require, for instance, if a person has encountered something like that, we encourage people to then approach the road accident fund, confirm that money were paid into the account of the legal practitioner, ask for an expenditure authorization. It's called an expenditure authorization, where that offer is made and where the payment has been made, because it will also identify the account number that was paid into. They bring that to us because when we investigate the validity of the claim, those are things that we need to satisfy ourselves with, that there was money entrusted for that person. So that's the kind of evidence we're looking for. But again, when they engage the services of the legal practitioner right from the onset, they will have entered into an agreement or a mandate where they appoint that legal practitioner to be their representative with the road accident fund. So that again forms part of the evidence, because then we are happy that there was a legal service that the person was receiving from the legal practitioner. So in the affidavit, again, that I spoke about earlier, they need to identify themselves as the claimant with us, and they also need to identify the legal practitioner that they were using and the legal practice where that legal practitioner was practicing from. And I'm mentioning that because legal practitioners can operate from more than one legal practice. So we need to know when we deal with a claim which legal practice is involved, let alone which legal practitioner. So we need that kind of information. What we normally say, especially with the individuals, you will have heard that lately we hold some individuals around the country. What we teach the public to do is to keep all kinds of communication that they have with their legal practitioners, because from that information, from that communication that they have, we can deduce a lot of information as we do the merit assessment to see the validity of the claim. So we encourage people to keep all evidence, every communication that they have with the legal practitioner, because the legal practitioner, on the other hand, does exactly the same. When you consult with them, they will be jotting down some notes. They will be keeping everything. And if it happens that you have not kept anything, we can easily say, this is what we said, because that's what they jotted out. And you have nothing to counter what they are saying. So it's important that people also keep their own evidence on their side.
Very, very important and practical advice there. Thank you so much. We're talking and in conversation with Simtandile Miyamane, who is a practitioner support manager at the Legal Practitioner Fidelity Fund. And if you have questions or comments that you want to raise around this question about how we get support for instances where our lawyers or attorneys or people who work in the legal fraternity on our behalf do us dirty, as they would say, or steal from us, or are in any way reason for loss that we suffer within those matters, you can call us on 0861 987 000 and ask Simtandile questions about how they operate at the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund. Of course, you can also send us your voice notes on 083 303 7093 or hashtag Power Perspective on X, on Twitter, and I will engage with you there. Simtandile, I'm curious about the question here about the remedies that you offer, because you've also announced since April this year that you have a partnership with the SIU, for example. And so is that one of the mechanisms in which you can support and help people recover loss?
Well, we do enter into memoranda of agreement with a whole lot of institutions that can assist us in terms of meeting the problem that we have. SIU is just one of them. We also have a working agreement with the AFU. So there's quite a number of institutions that we also look to partner with. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the legal services when they are provided, it's not only just about the legal profession, but it touches at other points of the justice system. So we try to have partnerships with all of those. It is our attempt to actually send the message that details any potential theft that anyone could still be claiming. there is a question that you asked earlier on, which I don't believe I touched on, and that was to say, does the legal practitioner's fidelity fund come in full when there's a claim? The legal practitioner's fidelity fund is a fund of last resort. What that means is if your money does go missing, you will first explore all legal avenues that's available, including excusing the legal practitioner and the legal practice. You recover what you can recover. If you are unable from that process to recover everything that has been stolen from you, you come and claim the balance from us. If you are unable to recover anything from the process, then you come and claim the full amount from us. So there's two steps that we will run when we do our investigations. We first do the merits investigation to see if the claim itself is valid. Once we satisfy ourselves that it is a valid claim, we then say what is the quantum, how much do we need to come in with. That's where we look at what monies were entrusted with the legal practitioner, what monies were used for your benefit, and what is the amount that has been stolen, and that's the amount that we're going to settle.
Wonderful. That's very, very clear in terms of how you work. In terms of the agreement with the SIU, it said that that agreement since April has helped the prevention of about 3.1 billion in potential losses. What does that mean? How does that practically work? How would an SIU intervention prevent loss?
Well, prevention is in the sense that, like I've indicated, the various agreements that we are entering into are to deter future theft. So it does not necessarily mean that what has already been stolen will be prevented, because that has already happened. But we are putting together measures that say when others who are intending to steal look at how we are dealing with theft and how things are dealt with going forward, they will have to think twice about doing it, because they know what the consequences are once they are found. So we are putting measures that we say to people, don't even go there. So that's the main reason why we are bringing the SIU in place, because they will also help us with special investigations, because they are a unit that specializes with that. So they can help us with that. And like I say, it is to deter the practice from happening.
Absolutely. You've been embarking on some Imbizo sessions as well, because, of course, this is not something that is widely known, the kind of work that you're doing. And so building awareness around that is absolutely important, especially for the kinds of communities that most need this. Because, of course, people who have, high incomes and are very au fait with the legal space may have other remedies. But it's particularly people who are very vulnerable, who have, low funds already when they start this. And that's why I thought RAF was such a good example. Those are the kind of communities you really want to target. Talk to us about what comes out of the Imbizo sessions that you've been running. How do vulnerable communities experience the legal system and their relationship with lawyers? I imagine these power dynamics are quite prolific in terms of the way that people experience it. But what have you learned from the Imbizo process?
What we have learned is exactly what we had suspected before we started embarking on the Imbizos. The radio interviews that we conduct, the public awareness that we do via the radio interviews, has been there for years. But what we realize is that people are not necessarily listening at the time that we are on air. So that when we introduce the Imbizos, to go and talk to the people directly, get their concerns, hear what their problems are. And that we are getting. One of the areas that has been high in terms of complaints that we get at the Imbizos is around the road accident fund, where people are saying there was a thing that was done for me with the road accident fund by an attorney, but I never got to receive any money from them. So we then advise them to say, approach the road accident fund, confirm that money was paid out, get evidence. And once you can get all of that, then you can approach us and you can approach the Legal Practice Council with that information. But what we also found, especially when we went to the Western Cape, there was also an issue around conveyancing matters. And conveyancing matters, I must also mention from the claim side on our part, it is the highest, where people buy and sell property. It is the highest because the amounts involved in conveyancing are quite high. And there's a tendency of monies getting lost either from the purchaser who makes the deposit into the trust account or from the seller after the transfer has been registered in the purchaser's name and the seller doesn't get the proceeds of the sale. So you can imagine a person who's selling a property, the property is gone, it's no longer your property, it's registered in the name of the purchaser, and you're not getting the money for selling that property. So basically you've completely lost out. So we do get those kind of complaints. And people say we have been having these problems, but we did not know that there's somewhere where we can go to claim these monies. We did not even know that there's somewhere where we can go and report these. So these individuals are effectively helping people to know what institutions exist out there to help them, whether they've got complaints or they've got claims, or in cases where a lawyer has made a mistake, because lawyers are human beings as well. So maybe mistakes do happen. So when they have mistakes, then we also have an institution, the Legal Practitioners and the Indemnity Insurance Fund, that will actually assist instead of people thinking, okay, it was a mistake, that's it. So people are now empowered to know that if this is what I encounter, this is where I go. If this is what I encounter, this is where I go. And the attitude of the people after we've made our presentations at the individuals is very positive. People get excited that they now know where to go, because some of them even say, I had an issue, I do not even want to go to a lawyer because of my previous experience with the lawyer. But now that I know where I can go, I can comfortably go and approach a lawyer, because I know if a mishap is encountered, I know where to go.
No, and that's such an important one. And part of the reason why I think this kind of conversation is important, because we don't, we think about people within the criminal justice system, within the justice system as a whole, as our safeguards, as the people that we go to for assistance. And so in a year like 2025, where that has been shaken in many different ways, and the trust in legal practitioners, the justice system as a whole, the criminal justice space, including the policing, has been broken. I think it's so important for people to know that there is somebody who watches the watchman. And that's, for me, what the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund in this instance represents. Simtandile, as we wrap up, maybe just give people a sense of how they can, most easily engage with your work, engage with what it is that you're doing, reach out if they have legal queries, but also just understand more about the offerings.
I think before I even get to how they can learn more about what we do, I just want to say to the public, it is important that when you are going to engage the services of a legal practitioner, you first confirm that you are going to be dealing with a genuine legal practitioner. Because we've seen instances where people have dealt with people who have studied law but are not legal practitioners and portray themselves as legal practitioners. When their money go missing, there is nothing we can do. We cannot assist them. So the Legal Practice Council exists for people to go and verify and confirm that the people they want to use are indeed legal practitioners who are also in good standing to provide the service before they receive that service. Because should anything happen, they may not be assisted if that person is not a legal practitioner or is not in good standing.
Yeah.
So if people want to get more information, I can give you the contact details so that we have, which people can make use of. They can call our head office, which is in Cape Town, and the number is 021 424 5351. We have another number in Pretoria, which is 012 622 3900. For people who've got access to internet, they can go into our website where they'll get a lot of information, which also includes how to claim with us. And that website is www.fitfund, which is spelled FIDFUND.co.za. Those who want to drop an email, they can do so at attorneys@fitfund.co.za. And they will get as much information as they require.
Thank you so much, Simtandile Miyamana, who is the Practitioner Support Manager at the Legal Practitioner Fidelity Fund. Thank you so much for giving us that insight into the work that you are doing. And of course, have a great rest of the year and the festive season. May it be good to you.
Thank you, and same to you.